They smiled when they arrived, but I already felt that Christmas was going to hurt. Have you ever had the feeling of being surrounded by people who say they love you, but just wait for the right moment to take you down? That's that. I spent the whole year working, paying every bill, every repair, every installment, alone. While they pretended not to see, I turned around in silence, without applause, without help. I did everything for love. I just didn't know that their love had an expiration date. And interest. On Christmas Eve, as I put the turkey in the oven, they prepared something much more bitter, a plan. A plan to take what was mine. They said that the house was everyone's, that I needed to share, that it was not fair to have everything in my name. As if effort wasn't worth it. As if sacrifice had no value. They accused me. They judged me. They pressured me. And they tried to break me. In front of everyone. But what they didn't know is that I was ready. I kept quiet for months, but I kept everything. Every receipt, each contract, every test. And that night, when everyone thought they had one, I opened the briefcase. What happened next? It destroyed alliances, exposed lies, and freed me from a lifetime of trying to please those who never really saw me. If you've ever felt like you need to diminish yourself to keep the peace, this story is for you. Because sometimes the greatest Christmas gift, it is the courage to impose oneself. The aroma of cinnamon mixed with the heat of the oven filled every corner of the house. The lights flashed in the soft rhythm of the Christmas track that played softly, like a breath of comfort trying to calm a heart that already knew, without quite understanding how, that this night would not be like the others. Helena, with her hands busy between pots and ornaments, forced a smile on her face as she adjusted the star at the top of the tree. She has always been the basis of the family, and there, alone in the kitchen, she once again proved it. Even with the exhaustion in her eyes and the uncomfortable silence in the corridors, she pretended that everything was fine, as she had done since the beginning of the year. The clock was 6:47 p.m. when the bell rang for the first time. The arrival of relatives was marked by quick hugs, forced smiles, and looks that said more than words. "Everything is beautiful here. As always, right?" said the sister-in-law, pursing her lips in a cold greeting. The younger brother went straight to the living room, opened a beer, and threw himself on the couch as if he lived there. Helena, with a tea towel still on her shoulder, answered kindly, but felt a knot forming in her stomach. She was about to relive the usual pattern. She serves, others consume, and no one asks if she needs anything. As the children ran down the hallway and the adults settled in as guests at a five-star hotel, she began to remember. A whirlwind of memories came to light. The property tax paid with effort, the installments of the financing paid late, the renovations made with the money that should have gone to his own vacation. She remembered the entire Saturdays in line at the lottery, the sleepless nights doing odd jobs, the time she stopped buying new clothes to pay the electricity bill of the house where her parents, her brothers, and even nephews lived. That house that Christmas was standing because of her. But no one seemed to know, or worse, care. Supper was almost ready when she heard a loose comment coming from the room. "At least this year we have a place to spend Christmas, right? Imagine if it weren't for our house." The "our house" echoed like a drum in her ears. A nuisance that is difficult to ignore. The tone of the phrase was not one of gratitude, it was one of possession. That stirred something inside, a place she had been trying to keep quiet. Her gaze met her mother's for a second, but instead of support, she found indifference. That's when he understood. The feeling of ingratitude was not just an impression. It was real. And there she was, helping herself to the turkey she had bought herself. Between one alley and another, the uncomfortable silence grew. The veiled jokes, the whispers in the hallway, the averted looks. Everything was subtle, but sharp as a knife. When she offered her brother-in-law a glass of wine, he replied, "Oh, finally the owner of the mansion is serving us, huh?" with a tone of sarcasm that drew giggles from the corner of the room. She smiled back, but something broke inside. It wasn't the first time they had made fun of her, but that night, given everything she had endured all year, it hurt deeper. On the table set with all the affection, the tension was visible as hot steam coming out of the freshly prepared rice. While distributing the dishes, I heard loose phrases such as, "I should have renovated the bathroom upstairs too," or "Someone has to put a limit on this house, right?" No one confronted her directly, but each word was like a reminder that they were testing the limits. It was as if they were digging carefully, preparing the ground for something greater. And I felt that night there was a hidden plan behind the panettone. It was between the toast and the first bite that he heard a cousin ask, loudly but casually, "By the way, Auntie, on paper whose name is this house again?" Her fork stopped in mid-air. The eyes around the table turned to her with that false curiosity of someone who already knew the answer and just wanted the show. She swallowed hard and replied calmly, "The house has an owner, yes. And it's all right." But inside, his heart raced. It was as if the first thread of the web had been pulled, and she knew something big was about to happen. And even if she tried to keep the night in peace, even if she just wished for a quiet Christmas with those she called family, something inside her began to prepare. Because sometimes, when the air is heavy even in the middle of the Christmas lights, it is a sign that the truth is about to break out. And this truth can change everything, as we will see in the next chapter of this unforgettable night. 2 years before that tense Christmas, the house where the family gathered was about to be lost. The father, already weakened and retired, could no longer maintain the installments. His mother, always proud, avoided bringing up the subject. But the eviction notice arrived, and it was Helena who found it, on a cold winter morning, thrown under the door as if it were just another piece of mail. She read it and, in that instant, she knew she would have to do something. The house where she grew up, where her brothers took their first steps, where her mother still embroidered with her eyes full of nostalgia, was hanging by a thread. She didn't think twice. He took out his cell phone and called the bank. And there, without telling anyone, he took on the debt, in its entirety. That night, while the family had a carefree dinner, she remained silent. She kept the folded booklet inside her bag, next to the red lipstick she hadn't worn in months. She didn't do it expecting applause. He did it out of love, out of loyalty. But deep down, I believed that one day it would be recognized. For weeks, she reorganized her entire life. She canceled a trip with friends, returned a gift in installments that she had bought for herself, and started working double. He took more shifts at the hospital, started teaching at night, and selling cakes to order on weekends. Every penny he earned was destined for that house. Gradually, what was debt turned into a struggle, and what was a struggle became a promise. She promised that no one would leave, that their parents would grow old with dignity, without the weight of rent knocking on the door, that her nephews would continue to play in the same backyard where she once played, that this house, although full of cracks, would be a symbol of resistance, not failure. And when she paid the first installment, sweaty, tight, crying at the ATM, she felt that, somehow, she was giving back everything she had received. But over time, the family's silence began to bother her. No one asked how she managed to keep up with her bills. No one offered help. No one even thanked him. What was a sacrifice has become an obligation. And the house became our home. Never the house she saved. Month after month, she has seen her bank account dwindle and her fatigue increase. On his brother's birthday, they bought an expensive cake. On Mother's Day, everyone brought flowers. But on her birthday, silence reigned. A quick congratulations by message and a tight hug from the mother, who still thought that the one who saved the house was the hand of God. And she, even with a heavy heart, smiled. Because those who love, endure. But even the firmest love begins to feel the weight when it is not taken care of. When her sister-in-law showed up with the suggestion to renovate the garage and everyone applauded the idea, she looked around and thought, "Do they think money springs up here?" In the spring, with the help of a lawyer friend, she was able to renegotiate the contract and put the property permanently in her name. It was a relief, but also a warning. The lawyer advised her to keep everything, sign each step with witnesses, and keep a safe copy. She didn't understand why at the time, but she took the advice. Even though she trusted everyone there, something deep in her soul was already whispering that it was better to be prepared. From that moment on, she began to organize the documents as if it were a shield. "I kept every receipt, every transfer, every receipt." And even without wanting to admit it, a part of her already knew. Family love is beautiful, but it is not a contract. Time passed and attitudes began to change. Her brother, who used to barely show up, started to visit the house every weekend. The sister-in-law gave too many suggestions. The nephew kept saying that he would keep the back room when he grew up. And the mother, subtly, left phrases like, "This house is our greatest asset." She pretended not to notice, but inside every sentence was a small blow. Deep down, she wished that everyone would see her as the guardian of that house. But it seemed that they saw her only as the cleaning lady, the one who cleans, pays, and keeps quiet. In the present, already at Christmas, while family members laughed in the living room, she observed everything with different eyes. Those curious looks were no accident. The jokes, the hints, the crooked smiles. It all made more sense now. They knew. Or at least they thought they knew. Maybe someone had found out that she paid off the house. Perhaps someone believed that, because it was a family, everything should be divided. But what they didn't know is that she had also prepared herself. And that folder with the documents was there, waiting for the right moment. And that moment was approaching, like the sound of thunder before the storm. Supper was laid out with almost ceremonial delicacy. Plates lined up, napkins folded in the shape of a Christmas tree, red candles lit in the center, and small notes with phrases of gratitude, all handwritten by her. It wasn't just a meal, it was a gesture of love. Helena took care of every detail with the affection of someone who wanted to celebrate the union. But deep down, she felt that something there didn't match the beauty of the table. The looks, the yellow smiles, the muffled tone of the side conversations. Everything gave away that the party carried more than wine and French toast. There was another kind of yeast in the air, distrust. The younger brother arrived late, as usual, with his son on his lap and his wife grumbling about the traffic. He didn't even look her in the eye when he entered. He just said, "It smells good, huh? I hope there is beer left." Helena smiled, as she always did, but felt the first thorn of the night. The mother, sitting in the armchair, would ask about her favorite TV show and make a point of reminding everyone how difficult it was in the old days. The distant cousin, who had not appeared for 2 Christmases, started a conversation about inheritance, real estate, house deeds. It was a topic out of context, or maybe it wasn't. The children screamed, running between the legs of the adults, while some helped themselves before their time. Helena tried to keep everything under control, but the tone of the conversations deviated more and more to sensitive topics. "The house is beautiful, see? But have you ever thought if one day you want to leave here? How are you going to do it, huh?" said one of the uncles casually, while biting into a piece of tender. She pretended not to listen, but the comment hit deep. The feeling was that they were testing the terrain, launching words like someone who throws seeds, hoping that some revenge would sprout there, in the middle of the supper. Her sister-in-law, dressed impeccably and with makeup that clashed with the simple atmosphere of the night, was the first to provoke directly. "Wow, did you do everything yourself? No help? Not even so-and-so?" Referring to Helena's ex. The question seemed innocent, but the tone was acidic. She replied lightly, saying that she was used to doing everything on her own. And in fact, it was. But the phrase seemed to light a match in the powder keg in the room. One of the nephews replied, "Yes, but also, who tells you to have everything in the name of just one person, right? It's hard to divide." The phrase fell like a bomb disguised as an opinion. The crosstalk took on a new tone. One of the cousins brought up the subject of the last renovation. "I could take advantage of the end of the year and make the back porch right away, right? We help choose the furniture." Another amended, "And if you rearrange the rooms, you can rent one of them. A little extra money never hurts." Helena just watched. Inside, I tried to understand if that was naive or manipulative. Did they really think they could decide on a property that didn't belong to them? Or were they rehearsing their inaugural speech to soon take a more serious step? The icing on the cake came when his brother, with a half-full glass of wine, commented disdainfully, "Yes. Sometimes, it seems that someone thinks they own everything just because they pay a few bills." The phrase was said naturally, but she felt like a stab. And not for the phrase itself, but for who said it. He, the same one she helped so many times. The same one who left debts in her name, years ago, and yet was welcomed. She looked directly at him, but didn't answer. Because at that moment, he understood. It was not just envy, it was an attempt to rewrite history. The psychological game was set. With each joke, a nudge. With each false compliment, a veiled criticism. When dessert arrived, accompanied by a slight collective silence, the mother looked at her and said, "Yes, my daughter. This house really looks like you. But remember that we built this together, right?" The phrase sounded sweet, but there was the poison. It was a subtle attempt to erase all the effort she had made alone in recent years. To transform a heroic act into a family obligation. It was the kind of comment that doesn't scream, but push. Even so, she tried to keep the mood. He told a funny story from his childhood, recalled the Christmas when his father arrived with an improvised tree and made the children laugh. But adults weren't interested in memories. They were interested in territory. At the end of the night, when the children were already yawning and the adults were settling on the sofa, a comment sealed the tension. "We should schedule a family meeting to talk about the future of this house. After all, it's not fair that everything is concentrated, right?" The phrase was said out loud, unceremoniously. And that's when Helena understood. The coup was being rehearsed. But she had also been preparing in silence. And what no one knew, it was that that very night, she had already decided, if they tried to take what was hers, she would not hesitate to expose the truth. Because when gratitude dies, justice must be resurrected. It's time to reveal what was stored. I was just one step away from the next discussion. It all started with a seemingly harmless phrase. "What if we solved this soon, huh? Sign what needs to be signed right away, and that's it." The brother said this with a joking tone, while nibbling an olive from the platter. But there was no real laughter. The room, which still barely echoed with children's laughter and Christmas music, fell into a cold silence. Eyes turned to Helena, who was still holding a glass of wine half full. Her heart was pounding, but her face remained serene. She knew this was the official start of the confrontation. The theater of indirects had ended. Now, the attacks would be frontal. She stood up slowly and asked, in a quiet voice, "Sign what exactly?" The sister-in-law answered first. "Oh, you know, something fairer. That makes it clear that the house belongs to everyone." The brother interrupted. "Yes. We just want to formalize what is already reality. This house has always belonged to the family. It's not fair that it stays only in his name." Helena looked at each face. They were the same ones she welcomed, sustained, defended. But now, they seemed to be advocates for a selfish cause. The injustice of the moment hurt more than any debt paid. It was not just a material issue. It was a collective betrayal, and no one there hesitated to star in it. "So that's it?" she asked, looking directly at her brother. "Did you set all this up, a whole dinner of teasing, to corner me in front of the children?" The brother shrugged his shoulders. "It's not a setup, it's family talk. It's time for us to really share." The sister-in-law added, "You acted alone from the beginning. The house stayed in his name because he wanted to. Now you need to understand that all this here is ours." The mother, in silence, said nothing. And this silence was crueler than the accusations. It was the silence of those who allow injustice, of those who consent by omission. Helena tried to stay calm. He argued firmly, "I paid every penny. When no one could or wanted to, I went there and did it. This is only standing because of me." But the sister-in-law replied coldly, "You paid, yes, but he used the family name. This house has history. It was built by everyone. And you should have talked to us before you decided everything yourself." One of the cousins said from the corner of the room, "It looks like a dispute over inheritance, and no one has died yet." Laughter echoed, laughter of disrespect. And she, there in the middle, felt her legs falter, not from fear, but from disbelief. The voices went up. The older cousin accused, "You always wanted to be better than us. That's why he put everything in his name." Another shouted, "We should have recorded everything when Dad was still alive." Chaos ensued. Each one said something, and no one listened. Frightened children huddled on the sofas. The Christmas music, which was still playing in the background, seemed to mock the scene. The room became an arena, and she, alone, in the center, surrounded by faces that she used to call family. The feeling was that she was being judged by a court that ignored all the evidence of her dedication. She tried to appease. "Let's talk later," calmly. "Today is Christmas." But she was interrupted. "Do you want time to prepare some paper? Any tricks? There's no point in running away." The mother finally spoke. "Your aunt is right. We have to solve this now." It was the last straw. The ground seemed to shake under his feet. How so? Her own mother, now, on the side of those who disrespected her? It was as if the figure she respected the most had signed a sentence against her. An emotional stab. She felt something tear inside, and it wasn't pride, it was a kind of grief. It was then that someone, perhaps one of the uncles, threw the last spark. "The truth is that you want to take everything from us. Has always been like this. He feels superior." She lifted her chin, her eyes steady. He didn't scream. He didn't slam the door. But he spoke firmly. "Do you want justice? So they will have it. But not in the way they're imagining it." The sentence fell like thunder. The screams stopped. For a moment, no one answered. She left the room slowly, walking with determined steps. And in that dense silence, an even greater tension began to be born. Because what would come next? It would not be expected by anyone. And when she returned, with the briefcase in her hands, Christmas Eve is no longer just a family conflict. It was about to become the most memorable moment in the lives of everyone gathered there, including hers. Helena was still holding the briefcase closed, with her fingers firmly around the worn leather, when Uncle Roberto stood up and spoke with a conciliatory air. "Let's talk calmly. Nobody wants to fight here, especially on Christmas Eve." But Helena did not feel peace in that sentence. She knew that tone well. It sounded empathetic, but it was tactical. Her brother, Marco, approached and sat next to her, with a heavy hand on his shoulder. "We know that you have done a lot for everyone, but now it needs to solve it as a family." She did not answer. because he knew that every word from then on would be a well-rehearsed coup. Sister-in-law Patricia entered the scene with an envelope in her hands. "We looked for a lawyer, just to understand how this family heritage works. He said that if there was emotional contribution and emotional ties, the house can be divided." Helena looked at the envelope without opening it. She knew what was there, a generic paper without legal weight, but used to destabilize. They were setting up a false basis of justice to justify a takeover. The attempt was clear: to transform her sweat into something collective, to mask greed as care for the good of the family. It was then that Helena's mother, Dona Elza, broke the silence. "Daughter, I just wanted to see you united." His father would never accept all this confusion. He said that homestays are for everyone. Those words were like a stake driven into his chest. Because instead of protecting the daughter who supported everything alone, the mother blamed her for the division. Helena felt alone in a way that no physical loneliness could cause. It was the emotional abandonment of the one she wanted most around at that moment. On the other side of the room, Cousin Fabio took an aged paper from his backpack. "It's here. Land registration. It's in our grandfather's name. That means that this soil belongs to all of us." That bordered on the absurd. The land had already been renegotiated, bought by Helena, legalized at the notary's office. But they used anything, even an innocuous document, to give the appearance of legitimacy to what was actually an emotional attack. They wanted to confuse, manipulate, scramble the facts with distorted memories. And the worst, all this in front of the children and the elderly, as if it were an assembly. Suddenly, a WhatsApp screenshot appeared projected on the nephew's cell phone. An old conversation where Helena said, "I'll do whatever it takes to keep this house alive, for the family." Patricia pointed to the screen. "See? You said it yourself. It was by everyone. Now you want to keep everything." Helena closed her eyes for a moment. It was true, she wrote that. But it was in a moment of desperation, when she was alone in front of the bank, trying to prevent the loss of the house. They used his generosity as a contract clause. Love now had a legal footer. Is that it? Emotional blackmail has reached another level. Patricia began to cry. "I don't know where to go with my children if you take us out of here." Marco swallowed. "If this house stays only in your name, we lose everything, Lena. Everything." The uncles began to murmur words like injustice, selfishness, coldness. Helena, who prepared Christmas alone, who supported everyone for months, was now painted as the villain of the story. And that hurt not only in the skin, but in the soul. It was like watching everyone she loved turn their backs at the same time. It was then that the attempt to invert the narrative came. "You are holding this folder as if it were a threat," said Fabio. "This was supposed to be a night of unity, and you brought war." Helena laughed inside. Because yes, that folder was a threat. But not against the family. He was against lying. It was the protection she forced herself to create when she realized that no one would ever recognize her effort. She thought about the late night selling cake, the overtime in the hospital, the sleepless nights. Each paper inside was a scream that she didn't give. Dona Elza went further. "You were always more distant. You did everything yourself, so now you can't wait for others to understand you." That was the cruelest blow. Helena was not distant out of pride. It was out of necessity. He isolated himself to protect others. He worked in silence so as not to worry. He sacrificed himself without charging. And now, this silence was used against her. As if the fact that he didn't ask for help was proof that he didn't deserve respect. Love became a weapon. The absence became guilt. The truth has become a distortion. Marco tried to look fair. "Do it like this. He leaves half of the house in his name and the other half in his mother's name. That way no one loses. But Helena knew what was behind this proposal. It was the open door for future invasions. Once the starting lineup was broken, it would be a matter of time before he lost control. That was a plan, not a solution. A gentle blow. And she was there to say no. For the first time, with all the letters, without hesitation. It was then that the lowest comment of the night came. One of the uncles, half drunk, grumbled, "You're alone, without a husband, without a child. What are you going to do with this whole house? Are you going to die inside it?" The laughter that followed was stifled, but present. Helena swallowed. It wasn't about the house. It was about what it stood for. The problem was that she had one, alone, woman, independent, unattended, an affront to the standard. That wasn't the envy of the property. It was a rejection of the freedom she had won. "If you want a judicial war, we'll go all the way," said Fabio, standing up. "But if you want to avoid that, give a little." Helena did not answer. She only looked at him with steady eyes. Because at that point, she no longer felt afraid. I felt disappointment. A pain that was older than that night. A pain that began the day she realized that, even if she gave her all, she would still be judged by those who gave nothing. She stood up slowly. The room fell silent. The children stopped playing. The adults stood motionless. Helena put the briefcase on the table. "If you want justice, you will get it." Her voice was firm, without trembling. His eyes dry. And for the first time that night, she was the one who had control. Everyone stopped, because they knew that inside that folder, there was something that would change everything. And when it opened, what was inside was not just paper. It was the answer to all the lies of that supper. And it was just the beginning. Helena looked at the folder in front of her as if holding not only leaves, but her own dignity encapsulated in paper. The dark leather, worn at the edges, held within it the receipts, signatures, and contracts she had accumulated over 2 years of sweat. That was not just legal documentation. It was the memory of each resignation. Every sleepless night, every yes she gave to save that house while everyone else said, "We'll see later." She pulled the zipper slowly, unhurriedly, as if savoring the silence that precedes an earthquake. Everyone's eyes were on her. None of those present dared to interrupt. Not even Marco, who still held the glass halfway with tense fingers. Helena took out the first paper, the notary's certificate, updated, with her name stamped on the top as the sole legal owner of the property. Here it is. Definitive deed. The house was renegotiated in my name. Paid. Legalized. And protected. Her voice didn't tremble. No screaming, no venting. Just the strength of someone who has cried everything there is to cry even before the war started. Patricia tried to react with a "but," and Helena continued, "Here are the receipts of each installment paid. From the first reel to the last. The bank transfers, the discharge notes, the deposits made with my salary. Everything with date, bank, CPF, and signature." She opened the folder as a lawyer opens a process. Safely. And one by one, the papers slid across the table, like cards revealing a game that the others thought they mastered. But Helena never played to win. She played to protect herself. And now, he was reaping the price of precaution. The silence that settled was as thick as cement. No one knew where to look. The faces, once bold, now avoided eye contact. Even Donna Elsa averted her eyes. Embarrassed. Helena looked at her mother and said gently but firmly, "You may not have held my hand on the worst days, but I held yours anyway. And so, I deserve respect." The phrase was not revenge. It was liberation. It didn't hurt anymore. It was the kind of line that only someone deeply wounded can say without rancor, because he no longer expects anything back. Fabio, trying to escape, muttered, "But that's just paper. The house is feeling. It is history." Helena replied, without blinking, "Feeling without responsibility becomes abuse. History without truth is manipulation." And that was the phrase that sealed everything. Because at that moment, everyone understood. She would no longer bend. She didn't need approval. She owed nothing. For the first time, she was the one who dictated the rules. And what was said there, with signature and seal, was unquestionable. Marco threw the glass on the sideboard and stood up, muttering, "You won't get anything today, let's go." Some followed him, trying to keep their composure. Others remained, silent, with lost expressions. And it was in this silence that Helena said something that would echo for years. "I didn't need to prove anything, but I chose to show everything." Because the truth, when it is ignored too much, comes back like an avalanche. And who gets in the way is buried. The briefcase remained there, open on the table, like a monument of resistance. The house was in order, legally, emotionally, and spiritually. Helena no longer needed to defend herself. Justice had already been done before everyone's eyes. But what would come after would not only be legal consequences, and yes, human consequences. And that was what she would see next. The fall of the masks and the true face of those who claimed to love her. Because sometimes, the weight of the truth is so great that it doesn't just destroy arguments. It destroys bonds, and frees those who have always carried others on their backs. The room was still immersed in the echo of Helena's last sentence when Marco, clearly cornered, pulled the chair back with a sudden gesture. The wood scraping on the floor cut through the silence like a knife. He tried to maintain his posture, but his voice came out shaky. "It's not just paper that makes a house belong to someone." And he left, without saying goodbye, without thanking, without apologizing. Behind him, Patricia straightened her hair and mumbled something incomprehensible, as if she wants to maintain her dignity even when she has already lost the argument. She held her son's arm tightly and hurriedly left, avoiding any gaze. Other family members, once so involved in the attacks, now stared at the ground. Cousin Fabio, who hours before spoke as if he were a soap opera lawyer, tried to smile, as if to say, "Don't take it personally." But Helena just stared at him with a firm look, without anger, just certainty. It was at that moment that Aunt Rosa, one of the few who had remained silent during the confusion, approached with teary eyes and said, "Forgive me, my daughter. I knew this was going to end badly, but I kept quiet." Helena did not answer with words. He just nodded, because sometimes forgiveness begins in silence. The biggest disappointment came from her own mother. Donna Elsa remained seated, as if she were anesthetized. He did not apologize. He did not recognize the mistake. He just folded his arms and said, "You should have told us sooner." Helena, with the serenity of someone who has matured in pain, replied, "I tried, but you only listen when I scream. And today, I yelled at documents." That was like a mirror breaking, because it revealed something deeper than the discussion around the house. The pattern of devaluation that she had been carrying for years, in silence, between forced hugs and Christmases full of unspoken sorrows. An emotional cousin cried and asked for forgiveness. "I went on the wave of others, Lena. I didn't know you had done all this." And there Helena understood. Many there did not attack out of malice, but out of convenience, out of ignorance, out of fear of not benefiting. And that didn't make them any less responsible. But it showed that not all betrayal is made of hatred. Some are made of cowardice. "Still," she replied firmly, "now you know, and everyone here will have to live with what they tried to take from me." The truth had been revealed, but the wounds it left would not heal quickly. Those who remained in the house tried to clean the room. Not the physical room, but the energy. They made forced compliments, remembered old stories, talked about a new beginning. But Helena did not fall into the trap of hasty reconciliation. She knew that some things are not going to go back to the way they were before, and that forgiving is not forgetting. It is choosing not to carry hatred, but to remember where you should never set foot again. Every word he heard that night would be kept as a tattoo of fire, not to feed hurts, but to remember who she is and how much it costs to stay on her feet. Before going upstairs to the room, Helena looked around and saw an emblematic scene. The lights of the Christmas tree were still flickering, but now they looked tired. The golden balls reflected confused faces, some embarrassed, others oblivious. The nativity scene in the corner of the room seemed more symbolic than ever. The birth of something new in the midst of rejection and humility. Helena felt a tightness in her chest, but she didn't cry, because inside her, something had also been born that night. And it wasn't sadness, it was strength. The strength of those who finally put themselves at the center of their own history. She climbed the stairs slowly, feeling her body weigh in a different way. It wasn't physical fatigue. It was a kind of liberation that gives vertigo. As if after years of holding the world, she had finally put the burden on the ground. Each step seemed like a step away from emotional dependence, from the validation of others, from the need to please everyone. When he reached the top floor, he stopped in front of the room and looked out of the window. Outside, the sky was clear, silent, and for the first time that night, Helena took a deep breath and felt that the air belonged to her. But there was still a decision to be made. One last choice before closing that cycle. Because now, with the truth exposed, it remained to decide who still deserves to be in this house, and who will stand outside the door. The sun rose shy on that Christmas morning, dyeing the white curtains of Helena's room golden. The house, silent, seemed suspended in time, as if it had fallen asleep along with the ghosts of the night before. Downstairs, the room still kept the marks of the confrontation. Half-filled glasses, forgotten plates, crumpled napkins. But Helena didn't run downstairs to clean up. For the first time in years, she didn't feel guilty about letting the house wait. Because she was also silent. A good, fertile silence that didn't hurt. A silence of someone who, finally, owed nothing to anyone else. She remained in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling as if looking into her own future. It was strange not to hear footsteps around the house, not to feel the movement of family members. But at the same time, there was a lightness there that she didn't know existed. As if the air was cleaner. As if the space, once shared with invasive voices, now belonged only to her again. It was his home. Your home. And that feeling, which for so long had been replaced by obligation, now came back in the form of relief. On the way down, each object looked different. The Christmas trees still shone, but with a softer, almost respectful light. The family photos on the shelf seemed to observe her with different eyes, not as the helpful daughter, the available sister, the always helpful cousin, but as a whole, firm, decisive woman. She ran her fingers over each frame, remembering how much she annulled herself for years to fit into the molds of the good daughter, the peacemaker. But now, she didn't want to fit anymore. I wanted to expand. He wanted to occupy his own house with everything it was, without apologizing for it. He went to the kitchen and prepared his coffee in silence. The water boiling, the smell of the powder being strained, the sound of the cup landing on the saucer. Small things, almost banal, but which now had the flavor of autonomy. Helena sat at the table with the mug in her hands, looking at the open folder that was still there, like a sentinel. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel resentment. Only the conviction that he did what needed to be done. The justice she sought was not revenge. It was recognition. And even though many left without apologizing, she wouldn't bow down. Because now she recognized herself. Slowly, He began to collect the objects from the night before. He put away the cutlery, washed the platters, blew out the candles. Each gesture was like a rite of passage. He didn't just clean up the mess of the supper. He cleaned up the pain, the humiliation, the weight of false union. Each stacked plate was a symbol of closed cycles. Each folded napkin, a promise to herself, never again to be silent to maintain a peace that only existed for others. As he passed the cloth over the table, he remembered the phrase he had said the night before. The truth, when it is ignored, comes back like an avalanche. And he thought, he's back. And she took with her what she needed to go. Later, she went up to the guest room and began to empty the closet that Marco used. There were forgotten shirts, old magazines, small belongings that he never took. Helena separated everything into boxes with labels. Not with hatred, but with closure. That was not retaliation. It was maturity. It was like sweeping away the leftovers of a phase that ended. The same thing he did with Patricia's belongings, which occupied one of the closets in the hallway. There were so many objects, so many marks of how much she had given up space to keep others close. But now, it was time to go back to occupying each room with his own presence. Helena called a carrier and scheduled the withdrawal of the items for the next day. He also wrote an email to the lawyer, requesting guidance on how to formalize the boundaries of the house so that it would never happen again. I didn't want lawsuits. He wanted peace, but a peace protected by responsibility. When he finished, he sat on the sofa, took a deep breath and closed his eyes. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't think about what he needed to do for others. He thought about what he wanted to do for himself. That afternoon, he went to the back garden and began pulling weeds that grew between the stones. The work was simple, but symbolic. Each root pulled seemed to represent an unresolved story, a hidden resentment, a lie swallowed in the name of harmony. The wet earth ran down her fingers, but she didn't care. It was almost a silent ceremony. When he finished, he planted 2 lavender seedlings, one next to the other. Here begins my new phase, she said to herself, and it will be light, firm, and only with those who deserve it. In the days that followed, Helena did not look for any of the family members. He also did not block them. He left the doors open, not those of the house, but those of choice. Whoever wanted to go back would have to come with truth. Those who did not come had already left even before Christmas. He received some short messages. I'm sorry if I hurt you. Sorry for yesterday. You're right. None answered, because words without change are just noise. And after so much emotional noise, she was learning to choose the silence that heals. Gradually, the house gained another rhythm. Helena redecided everything. He took some pictures of the walls, moved the furniture, changed the bedspread. All subtle, but necessary. It was a way of saying to herself, this home now belongs to me in my entirety. Not out of revenge, but out of respect, by merit, for everything she had carried alone, when no one wanted to share the weight. On New Year's Eve, she lit a white candle in the center of the room and said a prayer. He didn't ask for anything. He just thanked him. He thanked for the strength that came when everyone wanted it to collapse. By the intuition that made her keep the right papers. For the courage of having said, enough. For the maturity of not having returned hate with hatred. And for the freedom to finally understand that a woman no longer needs to diminish herself to fit into the expectations of others. That house, which so many had tried to turn into a territory of dispute, was now a temple. And Helena, who for so long was a servant of her own family, was now queen of her space. She knew that new challenges would come, that perhaps he would find many of those faces again at other parties, with other tones. But there was something different now. She would not go back to who she was. No more. Because the Christmas they tried to destroy, it was the same in which she was born again. And as she watched the night fall through the window, with her fingers touching the glass and her heart serene, Helena smiled alone. Not for what he won, but for what he didn't lose. Your truth, your voice, your identity. And then she thought, with a slight twinkle in her eyes, of that phrase she had said alone, in secret, since the first day she held that briefcase. Sometimes, the document you keep saves much more than walls. Sometimes, the biggest battle doesn't happen in courts, or in street fights, or in the news. The biggest battle takes place indoors. In the room where you grew up. In the hallway where he learned to walk. On the sofa where he heard family stories. It is there that, many times, the most dangerous enemy disguises itself. That of emotional manipulation, of limitless demand, of the expectation that you will always give in, always smile, always pay, always shut up. Helena found out the hard way. She didn't lose her house. He did not lose money. He did not lose status. What she almost lost was something far more valuable. Her peace, her truth, her identity. For years, she thought she had to accept everything to be loved. He thought that if he did more, if he served more, if he gave more, one day others would recognize it. But they did not recognize it. Because gratitude is not born of obligation. It is born of character. And what Helena's story shows us is that setting limits is not selfishness, it's self-care. That defending oneself is not attacking, it is existing with dignity. And that saying no can hurt for a few minutes, but saying yes to everything all the time destroys the soul little by little. That house was the symbolic field where all this unfolded. But how many people live this in silence, every day, within their own home, within their own family? How many Helenas are out there, trying to keep everyone standing, while they themselves collapse inside? How many people keep folders full of emotional evidence? Memories, sacrifices that have never been acknowledged. How many times have you asked yourself, do I need to annul myself once again, just to maintain a harmony that only exists if I keep shutting up? What this Christmas taught Helena, and maybe you too, is that it is possible to continue loving without continuing to hurt himself. It is possible to take care of without being exploited. It is possible to be family without accepting abuses disguised as tradition. Because blood can unite us, but only respect keeps us together. Only recognition sustains a relationship of truth. And if today you carry guilt that is not yours, if you feel indebted to people who only show up to collect, if you think you need to deserve every day a space that you have already conquered with sweat and tears, then breathe. You're not alone, and it no longer needs to justify itself. You have the right to protect what you have built. The right to say is enough. The right to be seen and respected. Helena did not become a villain for imposing herself. She became an adult. He became someone who, after spending his life holding the roof of the house for others, finally had the courage to say, "This roof also belongs to me." And now, perhaps, it is your turn to look at your own history and ask, how many times have I turned off my light so that others would shine? How many times have I accepted less, afraid of being called ungrateful? How many times have I blamed myself, simply because he wants to be respected? The answer can hurt, but it can also heal. Because in the end, the great turning point of Helena's story was not the document. It was the moment she chose herself, and she decided never to put others above herself again. If this story touched your heart, write in the comments, "The truth sets me free." Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay with us. Here, each story is a mirror. And remember, you no longer have to carry everything yourself. You just need to remember that your voice matters too, and his peace is also sacred.